Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank Dr. Alex Rothstein for such a beautifully worded introduction. He's never said anything that nice about me, ever. So I'll be sure to save that recording for later. And I'd also like to thank the Greater New York chapter of the American College of Sports Medicine for having me here today to speak to you all as well. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome you all to the last presentation of the day. Now, I'm really hoping they weren't planning on saving the best for last, because given the time of day and how some of you have been here since 7, 8 a.m., as well as my topic of engagement, that's going to be pretty hard to do, but let's not disappoint them and let's try to give them a really, really good one. So, my name is Danny Chan, and I'm a third-year physical therapy student from New York Institute of Technology. And I'm here to speak to you all today about cultivating student engagement in the classroom from my perspective, the learner's perspective. The perspective of a student who has experienced various learning strategies, the perspective of a peer tutor who has offered supplemental instruction to physical therapy students, and quite honestly, the perspective of a learner who is still trying to figure out how to teach more effectively while still being a student. Now, for those of you who have taken anatomy, how long was your course? 16 weeks? 12 weeks? 6 weeks? 8 weeks? Well, as most of you heard, at New York Tech, our anatomy course is about 6 weeks. And in that time, we have to learn about the brachial plexus, the circle of Willis, cranial nerves, the GI tract, as well as the muscles of the forearm, hand, foot, and ankle. Now, I hear a lot of oohs and whoas, so we'll discuss that in a bit. This is just a highlight reel. Realize that. There's so much more that we had to realize and understand and teach, or at least learn. It's a little bit hard to comprehend, right? Maybe difficult to do, but I'm standing here as proof that this is doable. But I'm also standing here telling you all that it's not the easiest thing to do. So think back to your anatomy course, or even imagine teaching one. Do you remember that feeling of too much material and never enough time? That's the exact experience and feeling I had as a student, as a teaching assistant, but also a peer tutor. Now, before we take a deeper dive into talking about student engagement, let's briefly talk about how I got into the position in the first place. So, right around when COVID started, PT students were struggling to learn effectively. And as we see here, the student dropout rate rose above 10% for the class of 2023. We see that rate increase over the next 2 years, but then we also see that same rate go down. We went from more students dropping out to less students dropping out. And this all started right around the time that peer tutoring was implemented. Now, although peer tutoring may not have been the main factor to decrease this dropout rate, the school saw this trend, they liked it, and they decided to continue with the program because of the results, but also student feedback. Now, you may be asking, where do I fit into all this? Well, it all started when I said yes to an opportunity to become a peer tutor. I wanted to take what worked for me as a student, but also a teaching assistant, and bring that into the classroom. I wanted to bridge the gap between being taught and being the one actually teaching. So let's circle back, set the stage, and talk about our learning objectives, because we are talking about student engagement. And I want you all to be able to understand why equity and engagement are important in the classroom, but also be able to identify and apply various active learning strategies to keep that engagement high. So, what is student engagement? Well, student engagement refers to the level of interest, involvement, and participation within the classroom. And that's an important concept to have because students are more likely to retain information, critically think, and actively participate. But here's the key. It's less about what you teach and more about how you make the students feel while learning it. And part of having student engagement is having classroom equity, where we're teaching all students, making sure that every student is involved, not just those who always answer questions or who always participate, but those who might be struggling silently and are too afraid to ask for help. So the three methods that I want to go over today with you all are giving enough time for students to think so they can formulate an answer, encouraging, demanding, and actively managing student participation to give every student a voice, but also collect feedback to improve that classroom dynamic to better improve engagement. Now, giving enough time for students to think is important because synapses need time to fire in order to, one, understand the question that was being asked, two, to retrieve the information from your brain, and three, to verbalize a response. Now, the average wait time that instructors usually wait is about 1.5 seconds. So I'll pose a question to you all, the first question of the day. What is the state of blood as it travels through the pulmonary arteries, deoxygenated? Now, did I answer that a bit too fast? Probably. Would you have gotten to that answer if I gave you more time to think? Probably. But did I give you enough time to think? Probably not, right? That's why it's important. So say I doubled or tripled the amount of time to think. I probably would have doubled or tripled the amount of responses or for you to arrive at the answer, right? So that's why it's important to increase wait time to, let's say, about 3 to 5 seconds, because that gives you enough processing time to understand the question, but also to try to arrive at the answer. So a tactic that I learned while being a student was the method of thumbs up. And I do want us to try this activity today when I pose you a question. So when I ask you this question, I want everyone to participate. When you have the answer, just put your thumbs up. Don't shout it out. And the question is, what is the state of blood as it travels through the pulmonary vein? Put those thumbs up. Up high, up high. Okay, all at once. What is it? Beautiful. You guys are a smart crowd. I love it. But do you see how some of you may have put your thumbs up right away? Perfect. But from my point of view, it took some time for you to understand the question, and it took some time for you to figure out the answer. And that gives me real-time feedback as an instructor whether or not the students know the material or not. Because if students throw their thumbs up right away and they get the answer right, that tells me that I may not need to go over that topic as soon as I thought. Now, the use of thumbs up is good, but some students just put their thumbs up to blend in. I've been there. I've heard students talk about that they put their thumbs up just to not feel embarrassed, to not know the answer around their classmates. And that's why I decided to use whiteboards in the classroom. Now, this method helps students participate more privately, but also more safely, because I wouldn't allow students to turn their heads around. What does that mean? Well, the students in the back wouldn't be able to see what the students in the front put as their answer, and vice versa. Now, I'd also often say something like, you know, a few of you got this wrong, so I want to go over it. But in reality, only one person got it wrong. And this allowed me to re-explain the topic without singling a student out. Now, as we move on to talk about collecting feedback, it's usually given at the end of a course, which is typically prompted by a professor's promise to drop their lowest quiz grade. But a solution to that is to collect more feedback more frequently, say like every class or every other class, as that provides more opportunities for improvement. Because by the end of a course, those same opportunities to improve the class have been either washed down the drain, thrown in the garbage, or just simply forgotten because they don't remember the last time that they wanted to give feedback. Now, frequent feedback leads to frequent changes in the classroom to, again, better support engagement. It's like actually reading the suggestions in the suggestion box. So what I have for you next is a sample survey that we gave the students. We wanted to see what learning strategies work best for them. And these were the responses we got. Practice questions helped. The use of pictures, drawings, and diagrams also helped. And one response mentioned the value of having variety. And these responses are partly the reason why I'll be discussing the active learning strategies in a bit within this presentation. So let's shift our focus and talk about active learning. Now, as a student with teaching responsibilities, I realized that there isn't really a best way to teach because a single method limits how many students you actually reach. So that's why it's important to have varied active learning strategies, to reach multiple students in the attempt to try to reach the entire classroom. It's almost like, let's compare it to passive learning. In comparison to that, passive learning is like reading and listening. And it's almost like putting groceries in your fridge without ever actually using them. You're stocking your fridge with groceries and you're never cooking with them. Whereas in passive learning, you're stocking your brain with information, but you're never using that information to actively answer questions. Now, the three strategies that I'm going to talk about to help promote active learning strategies are visualization, retrieval, and gamification. Now, students usually explain concepts verbally, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do that myself, but what I am trying to say to you is visual explanation can enhance verbal explanation. And this is particularly true when we're talking about a concept that is intangible or is abstract or is too microscopic to see. Something referred to as an invisible component. So, for instance, it might be more difficult learning and understanding how carbon dioxide is transported through blood, thermoregulation, and cross-bridging without referring to a visual image. I want to give you a more maybe real-life example. Imagine you're building furniture from IKEA, and you're not using those images they give you. Now, you might be able to do it, but I bet it'd be a lot faster and a lot easier to understand if you use those images they give you, especially when there's 5 different types of screws you have to worry about. Now, I want to give you guys another example, something that you all probably learned about, and something that I briefly touched upon earlier in this presentation, and that is the blood flow of the heart. Now, visualization, it does not have the requirement of being an artist. I've had students tell me, Danny, I don't want to draw because I can't draw. But truth be told, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It just has to make sense to you. So visualizing by drawing lines, boxes, arrows to help create a flow chart is a great example of how to use this. Now, on top of using visuals, what I used to do a lot in these sessions was using retrieval practice, incorporating that with the image. So I don't have to talk about strictly blood flow to the heart or of the heart. I can talk about related topics. So we're going to do this activity where we're putting our thumbs up. I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're all going to respond after maybe 5 seconds, right? So, blood, or which valve separates the right atrium from the right ventricle? That was about 5 seconds, okay. What do we think it is? Beautiful, tricuspid valve. You guys are really good. Or I can ask questions like, what is the state of blood as it travels through the pulmonary veins? Thumbs up. Okay, all at once. Beautiful, oxygenated. And then I can ask, what vessel does blood have to travel through as it exits the left ventricle? All at once. Aorta. Perfect. So, like I mentioned, retrieval practice is a great way to integrate to promote active learning, because retrieval turns passive review into active learning. Now, we all understand that retrieval may be a very good tool to help enhance your memory. For instance, it's going to help strengthen those synapses. It's going to help strengthen those synaptic pathways. So initially, what maybe took you 6 or 7 seconds to answer a question, it may now take you 2 to 3 seconds to answer that same question. But here's the catch. The retrieval task or the retrieval question, it has to match the level of understanding of the learner. Because when that retrieval task is too hard or too difficult for the learner to understand, the task becomes undesirable and it no longer promotes retention, learning, or engagement. And I mentioned earlier to you all that practice questions was a big component of how I ran these tutoring sessions. And I decided to use practice questions to help simulate a low-stakes testing environment, to reduce anxiety, and to shift the focus from performance into progress. So here's another activity for you all. I have a question, and guess what? We're doing the thumbs up method once again. So the question is, currently, the audience is finding it very difficult to answer questions during this presentation. What method can Danny utilize to help promote adequate participation among the audience? Is it A, wait 1 second after asking the question? Is it B, encourage the thumbs up method? Is it C, ignore any feedback the audience gives? Or is it D, ask another question about blood flow to the heart? So, put those thumbs up when you think you have the answer, and I want to hear it in about 5 seconds. Nice and high, nice and high. Oh, that's a lot of thumbs, okay. What do we think the answer is? All at once. B. You guys are a really great audience. I love it. So the answer is B. Now, as we move on to talk about the last topic, that last topic is gamification. Using game elements in non-gaming situations. Playing games in educational settings to help promote learning and engagement. Now, gamification also boosts both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation through games like Kahoot, through games like Jeopardy, because that promotes fun, but also competition. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know whenever I play these games in PT school, I'm playing to win. I'm playing to, 1, show that I know my stuff, 2, to boost my ego, and 3, to win a prize that sometimes might not even be there. So gamification can promote that direct interaction between the students, but also between the students and the teachers. Now, here's a quick framework on how to gamify something. So we have 3 components. We have mechanics, which are the rules, so having like a point system or a ranking system. We have dynamics, which are the interactions with those rules, so having collaboration or teamwork. And then we have aesthetics. And aesthetics are the emotions that you feel while playing the game. So like having fun or being happy that you got the answer right. Now what I want to do next is show you how I integrated gamification in these tutoring sessions. So this is the layout of the classroom, where I'm in the front, and there are 3 groups of 8 students. And each group had to nominate 2 captains. Now, I gave them 5 minutes to write down everything they knew about cranial nerves. They don't know this, but I didn't give them 5 minutes. I gave them 4. So I'm so sorry, guys. But the point was simple and the goal was the same. I wanted them to actively recall as much information as they could. And after those 5 minutes were up, I had the captains come up to me to spin a wheel numbered 1 through 12. And whatever number it landed on, in this case 7, they had to act out that cranial nerve. And when the captains decided on how to act out their charade, they went back to their groups, acted it out, and they had to write down what they thought the cranial nerve was. So what do we have here? We have a point system, because if they got it right, they got a point. We have collaboration and teamwork between the captains, but also the students. But then we also have fun, because I got to firsthand see how they decided to interact or pick their charade to present to their group. Now, with what little time we have left, I want to put everything together for you all. I want us to apply everything we've been talking about so far and learn 3 cranial nerves. And those cranial nerves that I want you guys to learn about are cranial nerve 1, which is responsible for your smell, cranial nerve 7, which controls your face muscles, cranial nerve 11, which helps shrug your shoulders up. Now, as you guys are reading all this, these are their functions, but let me give you a visual so you can associate those functions with actions. Now, after you get a good sense of what they do based on these visuals, we're going to play a little bit of a game. We're going to play what I call multiple choice charades. And the rules are very simple. I have 3 sections here. I have my left, I have the middle, and then I also have my right. So in order to be able to answer these questions, we're doing the thumbs up method again, right? But here's the twist. The first section that has 3 thumbs go up will be the section that's allowed to answer. So these are our answer choices. We have A, B, and C. So my first question for you all is, which of these images depicts cranial nerve 1? That was very close to call. Middle. What does the middle think? All at once. C. C. Perfect. You guys are smart. Now, cranial nerve 11 is depicted by which image? Okay, you guys are on it. I think it was the middle again. B. B. Perfect. And then the last cranial nerve, my favorite, is thumbs are up already. What do we think the last cranial nerve is? A, which is cranial nerve. You guys are really on it. I love it. Now, I want to circle back and go back to our learning objectives. The first being, I wanted you guys to understand why equity and engagement are important in the classroom by recognizing the benefit of waiting, so students have the time to think and formulate an answer. Actively managing participation, so students have a voice, and collecting frequent feedback to frequently improve the classroom dynamic. And for the second learning objective, I wanted you all to be able to identify and apply various active learning strategies. Now, the 3 I talked about today, again, were visualization, retrieval, and gamification. Now, realize I'm not saying that you're supposed to use these 3, but I am saying use a variety, because there are hundreds of strategies that you can use and that I can talk about, but I don't want to keep you guys here any longer than you guys should be. So, the big thing here is use a variety to help reach more students. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my interpretation on saving the best for last. Thank you.